Hola, hola, community. Welcome to another episode of Blender Today Live, episode 181. Today we have today's a big day. We have an announcement of the next open movie by the Blender Studio. We also have new things all around Blender, but not as many as last week. So don't expect an episode super long. Actually, the list of features fits in the one page of my document. So we might spend a bit more time hanging out in the comments. So go to Blender.Today to leave your questions, and I'm gonna try to answer them towards the end of the show. So, how's everything? Is it okay? Let's see. So, what is new? Well, all the links again are in the description, but you can just go to the Blender Studio website. So studio.blender.org or cloud.blender.org if you feel it's gonna get redirected, if you feel nostalgic. So yeah, Project Heist. This is the code name of the next open movie project by the Blender Studio, and you might like to hear that for, I don't know, since Sintel wasn't photorealism, was fantasy, but maybe Tears of Steel in 2011, 2012. That was the last open movie where the focus was on realism. Well, and Tears of Steel, it was a mix of like CG with real, with live action, so it makes sense. It made sense to be realistic. But since then, all the other projects have been stylized. Realism for some people is boring, for some people is very exciting, but I think there is no arguing in that the improvements that can lead to Blender would be huge. Rendering time, baking, painting, texturing, really everything that you need for a more, like even color science stuff that you need for a more realistic approach, you could have in, it could be shoveled into this project. Although again, the project's gonna be super short in terms of time. The focus is on quality and having something that is high quality. So you can read more here on the studio blog. There is already like a small pitch about where it could take place. It's more about like an action scene taking place in Iceland, and there is one character that is already being designed, plus many androids. So yeah, robots. You can read more about Hidden Project Heist and follow already everything that the team is putting out. My favorite update so far, there is even blend files of just some very first steps. There is some posture studies, but this one, look at this video test, brow deformation test. So this is a test that that Julian Kasper have been doing in order to give more detail. Well, basically it's layering the different layers of detail based on the deformations, or some kind of stress map using geometry nodes with the magic, I guess, by Simon. But yeah, basically sculpting different levels of detail and then blending them depending on how the distortion goes. That would be pretty awesome to have a like a dedicated stress map or stretch map, like in 2.4, was it 2.49 that we had stress map? No, in Blender internal, so that is 2.79. So yeah, pretty interesting. These are very early attempts. This is not even the actual character. This is just a test. So it's very interesting that they get to this level of detail already with the pore level and the wrinkles and stuff, and mixing between them. There is a blend file is also available for download, so go have fun. All right. Next, let's see what is new in the yeah, I think we can just start talking about the Blender world itself. There's not too many updates, so let's start with one very small one for the asset browser. So when in the asset browser, when you make a new library, when you add a new asset library, the name is not going to be empty anymore. You always had to type it manually. Now the name is going to be taken from the directory name, so the folder that you just added. So yay for doing less work. So this kind of UI work related to the user interface, there is now there's been a little adjustment to the width of the quick setup screen. So it doesn't have, sometimes it would happen that this button that this radio button that is with 3 options, it would be too cramped. If you have it in Spanish or other languages, it would be impossible to read anything. So now it's a little drop down just to fit more more text in it, so it's more readable. Then speaking of readable, in the UV editor, the dash line displayed, it used to be black and white. The thing is, white is usually the color for selection, so it would conflict there. So now it's gray and gray on black, so that way you can see when it's actually selected. Then speaking of select, I swear I didn't make the list today, but all the segues are actually connecting with each other. So speaking of selecting, more like renaming, in the NLA editor, the non-linear editor, animation editor, it's now possible to hit F2, the same shortcut that you use for renaming everywhere else in Blender. Now, while you have while the mouse is over the NLA editor, it's gonna rename the active strip. So yay for that. If you can remember, thanks for working on it, Red and Seer. If you know of other areas of Blender that could benefit of this, it's really not that much to just go and do like exceptions. If in the NLA editor, then this or that. If there are editors, maybe it would be cool to continue adding this to everywhere else in Blender. So F2, context based. Speaking of context, speaking of context based, in the node editor, there is one change which I assume is gonna move into, it's gonna also copy into other nodes. So for example, in the map range node, you can change the the type that you want to map range, right? If you want a vector or a float or other type of data. In this case, when it was a vector or a float, it wouldn't change the color of the header. Now it does, depending on the type. So if it's a float, it goes into the color for floats, regular converters. If it's a vector, it becomes purple. So yay for that. Dynamic node class map range node. Okay, I don't have a segue for this. Let's just get the pipe and get into the pipe. And mention in the video sequence editor, there is a new option for choosing the filtering that is going to be used for the transform strip. So when you move, rotate, or change or scale something, you could, by default it was nearest, I believe. And now you can choose if it's bilinear or nearest. So yeah, this patch by Dimitri Kapling. Thanks for having this patch. There is even some demos. All the links, by the way, are in the description of the video. But you can see the errors that you used to have. You can pick it from the transform panel, basically, bilinear or nearest. What else? The compositor. In the compositor, there is one new node. It's one new / old node. Nodes. Combine and separate XY set. If you ask me, I would have said, of course it's in the sequence and in the compositor. Nope. Apparently not. The combine and separate XY set. We have this node shade for shader and geometry nodes. It's not for... Oh, because it's the RGBA, right? Of course, if I compile, I think this is old enough. This 3.2 alpha from 31st, yeah, from a week ago. So, do we have the separate? There you go, RGBA. Well, I mean, it's almost the same, right? XYZ RGBA, but it's good that it's consistent. I would have sworn that we already had it, but no, we don't. Now we do. Okay, a bit of everything. Remember how last week I mentioned how much faster the OBJ was, the exporter was, and the previous week I also mentioned how much faster. Well, it got even faster now. How much faster? Well, in this commit by Aras Prankevicius, the speed up it's crazy with large meshes. So when a monkey, you can already see that it went from 5 seconds to 1 second, but in the splash screen, which is a bit more complex, there is a bird, there is the character Ellie holding the bird, and there is some environment. So it went from 6 seconds to 5 seconds. So okay, that's 1 second. However, it's cool to see so this is in 3.2, 5.2 seconds. In 3.1 was 49 seconds. And in Blender 3.0, so the Blender that everybody downloads right now, is 382 seconds. How much is that? 392 by 60. That is nearly 7 minutes. 6.5 minutes. And now it's 5 seconds. Imagine waiting 6 minutes for an export, and now 5 seconds. You might believe that there's something wrong. It's not working. It's failed. It's not doing everything. Keeping some stuff, right? It sounds wrong. Thank you, Ares, for this massive improvement. The other update, oh wow, this is the big news of the week, I think, besides having a new Open Movie project, is deprecation or / deletion, cleaning up, spring cleaning. It's not spring yet. Proxies. Remember proxies? Well, since a few versions ago, there has been, well, since 3.0, basically, since 2.8, has been some kind of transition towards using library overrides. There has been many improvements to performance and fixing things based on the production files that are super complex, linking thousands of objects during the Open Movie projects, especially Sprite Fright, the last Open Movie project, which had plenty of little mushroom guys that would, or sprites, not mushroom guys, that would have it would be the same character but with a different armature, different action. So that's something that wasn't possible with proxies. It is possible with overrides. The time has come for proxies to be deprecated. That is 3.2, by the way. In 3.1, you still have an option in the menus where you want to convert, and you can also choose not to convert to overrides. Now you don't have an option anymore because it is the default. The operators, the option to not auto-convert proxies on load has been removed. Then the operators that are related to convert proxies to override has been removed. And finally, all the internal code and deprecated related DNA data has been removed. So long, farewell proxy. You will be remembered by the proxy system who could only properly override, and not even properly, actions and rigs. Why would you? It was, yeah, poor proxy system. Many projects were done, feature film projects were done using that proxy system. So hey, there is, it was working, just had some limitations. All right, one more change, and this is on an add-on. This is just the last change that I have. This even not in 5.30. Cool. So the change, it's in the bolt, or in the add mesh. What's the name of the add-on? Add mesh bolt factory. So the operator for changing the bolt, it would basically replace that and remove the link duplicates. This has been fixed by Robert Bierman, and now the case is it's what you would expect basically, which is linking, like when you modify the original mesh, it's modified in place, which avoids having to copy anything between the new and the old objects, and causes all link duplicates to reflect the changes as the user would expect. So thank you, Robert. And that is all for me. I think I have everything covered that I wanted to mention, that I managed to see by going through the commits of this week and going in dev talk, in weekly updates, in the latest, the one from today. I think I haven't missed anything. There is one announcement that Blender will no longer stick to the VFX platform. This has been posted a few days ago, last week on Friday, and that the well, I think I announced that 283 and 293 has been released. Was it this last week already? LTS release. It doesn't say the date. Was it last week? Well, by the way, there is, I think it was last week. It's the first time that there is 2 LTS releases in the same day. 2.83.19 plus 2.93.8 LTS. So it is it's been updated. That's so cool that a Blender from so long ago, it keeps being updated to 83. Although it should end in June, I believe, which is when the 2-year support for 2.83 it's over. So I'm curious, if you're using Blender 2.83 LTS, let me know. Leave a comment or let us know. But it's good to see if the effort is worth it. Okay. Next, let's go into Blender.Today. Let's see. There's no thread? Hey, no questions. So, no, I think there's no questions. So, all right. Or am I missing something? Should we say something about Open Movie? New? No. All right. So let's see the chat. Will I be able to simulate soft robotic bending piston magnetic sliders with physics nodes? I believe so. If you know everything that is behind the physics of simulating soft robotics bending pistons, then yes. Does anyone know if there is a way to alter the mask color in sculpt mode? Seems to be few things I can change the color of. Mask color, the black mask color in sculpt mode? No, I don't think so. Although there is a mask, there was a mask setting, so I might be wrong. View overlays in this one. Let me know. What else? Blender.Today speedrun works. Blender works in Linux faster than Windows. Yes, that is correct. Well, not only that, but also memory-wise, it's fast, smarter. There are benchmarks on YouTube if you wanna see. No one made a chat. No, no one made a post. Wait, what open movie? What's the title about? What's open movies? Oh my god, you don't know what open movies are? Well, no worries. I will tell you. A open movie project is a brilliant concept that was pushed by Tom Rosendahl in 2005-6 when Blender became open source in 2002. The way of developing was first mainly cleaning up all the code in 2002. 3 and 4 was adding some basic modeling, texturing, like tools that were missing from Blender back then. Modifiers, for example, all that stuff. And then at some point it needed to be like some guidance into, okay, let's develop Blender with a direction. How do we get there? Well, by making a film. So Tom Rosendahl came up with the idea of Blender making open movie projects. So the same way that Blender is open source, the movie also will be open source. So if you go all the way back down, you will see that Elephant's Dream is the very first open movie made by the Blender Institute back then. The project was mainly to improve Blender as a filmmaking tool. So the compositor was added, a new animation system with proxies and groups and stuff was added back then. The compositor was added by Tom Rosendahl himself. Then Big Bang Bunny happened, that you probably have seen it in some shops for selling TVs and stuff. And the goal of this project was to improve the FAIR rendering, ambient occlusion rendering as well. Sintel in 2010, the goal was to make Blender the Blender internal renderer to support more, well, multi-res was also improved, but to support the renderer like bounces and lights and like what cycles would be, but it couldn't do it. So there was a branch made for it, and the feature wasn't really there. It was trying to add something to Blender internal that wasn't really for it. So actually what you see on Sintel, when you watch Sintel, what you see here is rendered with a render engine that was never released to like everyone in Blender.org. It was released to everyone, but in development, it's in the DVDs of Sintel, and probably you can find it on the Sintel blog. But yeah, the bouncing, the global illumination was added, and we used it a lot actually. This shot here in the bed, I did the lighting for this shot, and it was one of the first one that I tested the bounce of light bounces. So global illumination. So basically there is one big spotlight coming here, and that everything around it, it's actually just bounce lights. And before ray tracing, this kind of ray tracing, we had to, like, if you wanted some light there, you have to add a light pointing in the direction and then another direction, whereas this was all just bounces. It was great. It took a while to render, but it was amazing. So then this is when the team realizes that, well, especially Breck, the creator of Cycles, realizes that Blender internal is not made for that. So he comes back a few years later with Cycles, which was used for Tears of Steel, and it was the project that wanted to push the motion tracking capabilities in Blender. More than pushing, like introducing, because the difference between before and after Tears of Steel is insane, by Ian Hubert. Then some other projects were just like Caminandes and Glass Half were just projects in between. They didn't really push much other than some parts, not a specific area, but Caminandes with motion blur for fur, for example. Glass Half improvements, I think, in OpenGL rendering. Oh no, and Grease Pencil. I think there was some Grease Pencil effects that also got improved there. Cosmos Laundromat rendering, Cycles rendering massive scenes with grass and stuff, and smoke rendering as well. Another Caminandes. In this one we improved, I think, rendering as well. Motion blur, more motion blur. Agent 327, again, massive improvements in motion blur in Cycles. And the new dependency graph for better relations between objects. The Daily Dweebs, the first open movie project to be rendered in 8K AXR. Hero, Grease Pencil, Show Off. Spring, another Cycles improvements, plus 2.8. The Spring was made half of it in 2.7 and one in 2.8, so collections, all of that was tested so much. If you want to learn how Spring was made, there is an amazing Blender conference presentation about the pipeline of Spring. You can see here the production pipeline of Spring. It's just amazing. Andy explains everything from the very beginning towards the end, and the different stages of the production. You should check it out. Coffee Run, Eevee was the first open movie in Eevee. Settlers was a series of smaller open movies also in Eevee, mainly to test experimental shading. Sprite Fright tested library overrides as like no other project has, and how it would Blender behave with a bunch of characters. Project Heist in this announcement, as I mentioned, is to go with for photorealism. That is the idea. All right, I did a small recap in all open movies projects. And what is the best Blender tutorial? The one that you watch until the end, that you can finish. When will the hair node start? Well, there was a workshop last week or 2 weeks ago on hair nodes. There was a presentation by Jack Luke and to the team here about the project itself, and it's super promising. The team is still like preparing the what are the deliverables and the time frame and who's going to work on it and stuff, but it will be pretty cool. Like, well, again, another workshop that was here last week, that happened here at the studio last week, was the texturing workshop. Well, a workshop, mainly developers, they get together and they discuss the topics, the deliverables again, what it would be, the direction to go. There were mentions about layer materials, texture paints, texture layers, fixing the node texture editor. There was a lot of discussion, which I think is gonna be presented to online in the coming weeks. But very exciting. I just can't believe that there is this kind of discussion. Like, of all the projects that we've been discussing here and the texturing workflow, at the end of it, the Blender that you're gonna download in December 3rd, if everything goes according to plan, it will be just unimaginable. Textures, PBR, painting, Eevee, compositor, in viewport compositor, maybe, perhaps, I don't know. Super exciting times coming to Blender. Physics nodes or hair nodes, probably hair nodes before. Any AI algorithm making their way into Blender? Not that I know. Besides the denoiser. Did you see the 22 million views tutorial by Polyfjord? I saw it. Well, I didn't see the entire tutorial. I just skimmed through it, but amazing. Where is this 22 million people come from? What happened? Is there anything funny to do? Like, it's amazing. Super cool. I hope he maintains that view and brings in more people. Waiting for caustics in Blender. Any new? The patch has been moved from 3.1 to 3.2, but it's still being developed. Is bone shapes in edit mode going to get fixed? What do you mean? Did you report the bug? When people ask, when is this going to get fixed? Without pointing to a bug report, I always ask for a bug report. I'm not trying to play smart or whatever. It's just, it's good to know if there is a bug report and what is the status, and there is people that are being hired to only mainly check on those bug reports and if they are duplicated, mark them as duplicates. There is a lot of work going on there. Are we getting any closer to physics nodes or a change to fluid simulation? Well, physics nodes are planned for first hair nodes. I think it's gonna be first. But physics would come after. 25 million views. When will Blender 3.0 be available for benchmarks open data? That's another question that the team is that there is discussions going on, because Blender 3 has Cycles X, right? So it is very unfair to compare the tests from before and after Cycles X, right? So there was a discussion about maybe archiving all the benchmarks that are there now and then start from scratch with 3.1, even not even 3.0, because again, with HIP and with Apple Metal, the render times are just so different than right now. So maybe it's a good idea to start from scratch. Will there ever be a Cosmos Laundromat continuation? I cannot answer that because Cosmos Laundromat is Creative Commons, right? So anyone, including you, Diogo X2, can make a new Cosmos Laundromat. Any future improvement for water and smoke simulation? I really hope so. No news, at least that I know. How can I learn acting of animation? Record yourself. Put your phone and record yourself and try to animate that. So you are the best reference you're gonna get. Even if you're not really great at acting, if you're good, if you have an animation that copies that awkwardness that you may have while acting or trying to act, that's a brilliant animation. That's gold. I don't know why, but I can't scroll anymore. Like I try to scroll and it just doesn't work, the scrolling. And I had that also at home. There's something weird going on. Now I can. There are so many new amazing papers in physics simulation space. I hope some of them make their way. I really hope not, but remember, when you see those amazing papers, they are often in a very controlled environment, and they don't always maybe are aligned with the rest of the features in a big software such as Blender or even other software. So unless there's like a specific solver for physics, which maybe can be plugged in as a module for other physics, then yes, but not everything that you, and not, unfortunately, I mean, I wish everything was plug and play, but not everything can be implemented so straightforward. When is it possible to exclude objects from light? Light linking is very important for arc visualization, for everything, not only for arc, but for everything. Yeah, every time I do any kind of lighting, I miss light linking. I really hope it's yeah, it can be implemented soon at some point eventually. I don't even know who's working on that. If the patch is still alive, I just know that on graphical, graphical.org, there is a branch by Bone Studio that has light groups and caustics, so you can test it. Yeah, you should check it out. It's on graphical.org. Is there any questions? Nobody made the question thread, so okay. How much time I have? Maybe today I can leave it on time because I would like to do the Spanish one not too late. The Spanish Blender hoy. Will SSGI come to vanilla Eevee? What do you mean vanilla Eevee? There is only vanilla Eevee. The answer, I'm not sure. I bet there are ways with Vulkan, but I think Eevee is now going into the Eevee 2 or like Eevee X equivalent, so the refactor of Eevee. That is what the main developer is working on, together with other developers that are pushing the Vulkan move from OpenGL to Vulkan for Blender, which it is planned sometime this year. 3.2, no, 3.3, 3.4, we should end the year with 3.4, I believe, right? We have 3.1 now in March, then 3.2 in the summer-ish, Northern Hemisphere. And then, yeah, maybe we have, because the days have changed with 3.0 being longer. Will there be a way to save the spreadsheet as SVSSV file or run an SVG file and use it in geometry nodes? There was a node going around the other day, there was and on Twitter I saw that Johnny, I think, that he was working on a node that it will convert a string to a field. So, and he mentioned that it could be you could give it a CSV file, for example, and use that. But I don't know if the other way around, spreadsheet as CSV file. However, this sounds like a good isolated task for a new developer to jump in. There are more than one schema in the open data now. Yes. So cycles and wait, I can't scroll anymore. Where was I? Gee, I think it's maybe I should have asked you people to to comment on Blender.Today. Let's see. There are a lot of crashes when sculpting with a drawing pad on Linux. Please report. Please go and if you don't know how to report the bug, I made a tutorial on how to report a bug. It's on YouTube. It's blue and it has my face and it has a monkey face. Please check it out and report. Otherwise, it's impossible to know why, when, which tablet, which drivers. Is it planned to have a global node editor that handles multiple objects and therefore has multiple object outputs? Well, that sounds like collection nodes, which was a topic of discussion last year, tied to physics nodes in a way as well. So there, I wouldn't say it is planned, but it has been discussed last year. So keep my hopes high. I have done some M1 tests, Apple Silicon M1, and they are crazy. I love Metal support already. Good to hear. Is there plans for the outliner to scroll to what's selected if the list is long? Need to scroll to find what is selected. I don't think there are plans, as in I haven't seen a patch myself. The feature is cool, but it can get a bit annoying. I wish I would like to have it disabled. There is a design app that I like to use. Well, that is open source, that is called PenPot. It's like Figma, but for design. And let's see if I can show you what I mean. Yes, for example, if I have, and they have that feature, and I would like to ask them for it's open source, by the way. You can, I would like to ask them for a way to disable it, because, for example, when you select something, it has, look, it jumps into the side, and it's so annoying because it jumps all the time. Maybe because it's animated. Maybe if it wasn't animated, it wouldn't be so annoying. Yeah, maybe that's true. Or it could be an option. But I love this app, by the way. If you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend. PenPot is for designing, and it's open source and it's free, and it's made in Spain even, and online. So highly recommend it. What else? Where was I? Here. Okay. Hair self collision system is very slow and unstable. Yeah, hair is like, again, end of life, because it's gonna be replaced by a nodal system. Carrapa says, are we getting closer to have a game engine with application template and real-time physics being now implemented? Being now. Are we closer to being now? For all the things that you just mentioned to happen, there's like so many more steps, like game engine or real-time physics. We don't even have those steps. So I think they're getting closer now implemented. It's a bit too optimistic. I'd say in the long run, yes, but I wouldn't call it now. I would say in the coming, like, I wouldn't even know if in the 3.x series, I would say yes, but not a game engine. I don't think Blender should have a, well, personally, that's personal opinion, I don't think it should have a game engine is way too big, right? Like, you have from designing the UI of a game engine, to the controller systems, to exporting to PlayStation, Switch, and web, and there's so many other layers more than just the logic. I think Blender nodes should have a logic system. There should be some kind of interactive system, you know, for VR or for just general using Blender as an app, as an independent app. Or even, I don't know, if you want to use it for like VJing, for example. But a game engine per se, I wouldn't call it. I would call it an interactive engine, a logic engine, not a game engine. When is the Agent 327 feature movie coming? I have bad news for you. It's no longer in the plans. For the time being, at least. Unless you know any multimillionaire that comes and says, I really want the Agent 327 project, so please, here is a bag with a bunch of millions. Other that, I don't think it's right now the team is working on smaller short films. Will the shader node editor get new nodes? Like what, for example? Well, actually, yes, because the texture layer the new texturing workflow, texture layers, and all of that is going to require a lot of node editor, shading node editor new nodes. Is it possible to simulate the same render engine that Unity uses in Blender? I'm not familiar with what Unity uses, but if it's PBR based, then yeah. With the new hair system, please add the option to convert curves to hair. Yes, well, there is a node. Well, hair is curves, so yeah, or it's gonna be. Are there any new planned developments for particle nodes? Yes, I just mentioned particle nodes. Yes. Is there or will there be? Well, I mentioned, I think even last week, that the idea is to replace basically the entire thing with particle nodes, but exposing some of the setting. I think having a UI like this is super powerful and easy to handle, other than having to add all the nodes for these stuff. Well, not for caching, but for the rest. So we need presets. Is there or will there be more information on tutorials on the brow deformation you showed us at the beginning? You should ask on Julian on the studio website. Hope your day is doing well. I thank you. It's doing pretty well. Glad that we get to chat a little bit on the YouTube chat, at least. Multiple hard bodies in a soft body bending detail slider. That wasn't a question, but I agree. Hi, how are you? I'm doing well, Jorge. Do you speak Spanish? I do the same show right 1 hour after this on the Blender.Today YouTube channel. Blender.Today. It's the same thing, but I'm at home, as you can see. It's in the mess of my place. But I do it 1 hour after this show. Every Monday as well. Maybe a network rendering console inside Blender. Well, not really rendering network console, but the team is working on the new update for Flamenco. So there will be news coming to that. There is a big update coming to Flamenco, and all the tools that the studio uses. Actually, in the studio website, there is a new section up here that is called Pipeline and Tools that highlights all of that the team does behind the scenes for every project. There is things that I think you are not gonna find anywhere else. I think this Pipeline and Tools can be the main reason why some people may subscribe to the cloud, to the studio website, because yeah, like all the know-how of setting up a large project with Blender and with this is the studio, the pipeline video that I mentioned before, but like with the tools, with the more recently released Watchtower, Kitsu add-on, or Flamenco render, or there is a new software coming up there is one about SVN for setting up SVN. There's so many tools that the studio uses that you can learn from. Where is there here? Which is best, 2.9 or 3.0? 3.0, definitely. There is really not that big of a difference, but 3.0, it's not like 2.7 and 2.8. That 2.8 was better than 2.7 in many ways, but performance in 2.7 was still sometimes better than 2.8. But not anymore. I think performance in 3.1, 3.2 is just insane compared to 2.9 and 2.7. I hope the latest open movie is more attractive to viewers. The last looked amazing, but they were ultimately not very good as films. Will the new hair system have the option curves I already mentioned? It's notes. Any news on the research paper Blender is sponsoring? I missed that. Which one? Hi Pablo, I always wanted to ask, since we met at the Blender Conference 19, how did you join the amazing Blender team? By putting my work online. Yeah, just showing what you do online. And once I got an email from Tons if I wanted to join the team for Yo Frankie, the open game project in 2008. This year will be 14 years that I've been living in, well, that I've been coming to the Blender studio. It's insane. Custom bone shape disappears if you go into edit mode of the custom shape object. Well, here you should see the status of that, right? And developer confirm high. You're lucky. It's high priority, so it should be for 3.1. Should be considered for 3.1, I believe. Can confirm, check. So you see there is people working on it already. January 20, January 17. You can, I mean, it's been 2-3 weeks, so it is under the radar and it's high priority, so should show up in the developers when they go through the bug reports. They go via priority. Just remember, everyone tries for the smooth, graceful animation. Faithful recreation of hesitant and awkward action may be more impressive than grace. Everyone tries a smooth, graceful animation. Will be... Oh no, I scrolled one. I scrolled way too much. Okay, I will leave in a... let's do 5 more questions, but I don't remember where was it. Gracias to answer all the questions. Thank you. Let's see. Wow, was it really that behind? Here, will Blender ever see an implemented fluid system to replace MantaFlow? That is, MantaFlow just was added like 2-3 versions ago. It should be improved, not replaced with something else again. But yeah, we lack developers. So, remember to join the Blender Development Fund if you want to support Blender Foundation going after developers, trying to hire them and give them such a big responsibility as fixing an entire physics system. But hey, hopefully it helps. What else? Where was I? Scrolling up in the chat section is buggy. Okay, so it's not just me. Thanks for the answer. I was having an issue with Blender here. After editing geometry nodes, the viewport didn't reflect the changes. How can I fix this? Report it as a bug. I actually seen a bug fix on this today. So maybe download the latest Blender from the experimental one, and download experimental alpha 3.2 alpha and check if it's still happening there, because I've seen a fix recently. Will the last Blender version of the year have it released on the 2nd of December? The 3rd of December, because 3 December. Not sure, have to do the math again. But basically every 4 months there will be a new Blender release, and there's an LTS release this year as well. Blender, in your opinion, what is a good solution creating dynamic snow and the likes? Try doing something with geometry nodes, but haven't had any progress there. A good solution. Well, depends on how precise you want it. I wouldn't use geometry nodes now because I'm not a real expert in it. I would just use dynamic paint. It does the job. It's very visual the way you set it up. So I will give it a try with that, and if that doesn't work, then geometry nodes. But geometry nodes right now is lacking a lot of presets and yeah, ways of doing things more easily. Basically, like, it would be cool to have like the same way that you can set up materials in cycles and then the nodes built in here. Well, something like that for the physics or for dynamic paint, but they build the node tree separately. Color overlay doesn't affect the mask. Anyone at Blender doing the Infinite Journeys challenge? Didn't hear about that. What does switching to Vulkan mean for the end users? Well, means more forward compatibility, means eventually better performance, since Vulkan can support multi-threading. more properly. Hopefully better, well, more features basically. Hopefully ray tracing. Okay, I think I'm a bit over time. Let's see in orange. Intel is rocking hard on Intel 12700H. So if you can implement particle nodes with physics nodes, will that act the same as collection nodes? Not sure how is that going to be implemented yet, because I think collection nodes make sense to set up your scene, and physics could be there, but you also want physics in hair, you want physics in other parts, right? So how does it work? Is there a physics node system? Do you think PenPot is good for production yet? I think it's pretty close. They released a new version the other day, which and they are pretty active on it. So here at the studio, we are trying to use it for production, like for basically what the things we do, the prototypes that we make. But yeah, it's still a long way. It's a young project. But it's cool. I think it's a good thing to support it, to support open source design software. So if you can implement the particle nodes with physics, I already answered that. Can we have a visible cage while baking, which we can edit? The baking workflow is gonna be revisited hopefully this year. So I have no experience with other software, but the people behind the team behind it, yeah, they do. Will there be a way to render out lighting passes AOBs in Cycles X soon? But you can do AOB, shaders AOB. You mean lighting AOB? Yeah, no, not as far as I know right now. Is there a tutorial on installing beta versions with Linux? You can use Steam for beta versions, or just download the beta. You don't need to install anything on Linux. Well, on Windows either. It's just a zip file. You can and zip it on your desktop. Will the last Blender version of the year release on the 3rd December? It was a cool date. This is the same as before. Okay. I am running out of time and voice, and I will try to make it in time at home so I can do the Spanish version of it. The show of today was a bit unusual. We didn't have a thread on the Blender.community website, but we managed to hang out a little bit more on the channel, on the chat, which I don't do usually. Thanks for staying until the end. It's been a pretty chill episode. Next week we're gonna see some new updates. I think we are 1 month away from, yes, we are 1 month away from 3.1 coming out officially. So even though bug fixing should be towards getting that version ready, I think there are some very nice projects that are gonna give us some surprises in 3.2 alpha. Until then, I will leave you with the epic. Watch out your ear holes, your ear agujeros. Other than that, thanks once again. See you next week, same place, same time with Blender Today.